It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday, not the kind that changes everything, but that's exactly what it became. The morning sunlight filtered through the windows of my parents' house, landing gently on the beige carpet I had vacuumed the day before. The place looked clean, almost serene, like nothing bad could happen here. I was still in my pajamas, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug when I noticed it. Something was off. Dad sat at the kitchen table, face buried in the newspaper, his jaw clenched tight. Mom moved quietly around the room, eyes never settling on me. Michael, my younger brother, leaned against the counter smirking at his phone, while Stephanie, the golden child, lounged on the couch scrolling like her life depended on it. The silence between us was heavy, manufactured, like they all knew something I didn't. I set the mug down and asked the first thing that came to mind. "Is everything okay?" No one answered right away. Dad's eyes didn't lift. Mom glanced at me but said nothing. It was Stephanie who broke the silence. "Finally decided to wake up before noon, huh?" I stared at her, confused. "It's 8:30. She rolled her eyes. "Whatever." And that was when Dad folded the paper with slow precision, placed it on the table, and looked up. I knew that look. It was the same one he gave me the day I decided not to go to law school. The look of disappointment dressed in quiet rage. "Alyssa," he said, and my stomach dropped. He never used my name unless it was serious. "We need to talk." The air thickened. "Okay, about what?" He stood up, walked over to the living room, and gestured for me to follow. I did, heart pounding. The whole family shifted like a cast preparing for a final act. Stephanie stayed glued to her phone. Michael dragged a chair out lazily, and Mom took her place beside Dad, arms crossed like a judge. "I'll get straight to it," Dad said, voice sharp. "You need to move out." I blinked. "What?" "We've been patient," Mom added, "but you're not contributing." "Not contributing?" I echoed, stunned. "I work 2 jobs. I pay rent." Dad shook his head. "Side gigs and part-time freelancing isn't stability. It's not a plan. I'm building something. I have an online business, which has made how much?" Stephanie cut in with a scoff. "You don't know anything about it," I snapped. "Exactly, because it's not real," Dad said, voice rising. "You've been playing house, and we're done playing along." My heart was racing. I looked at Mom, hoping for some sign of sympathy. She looked away. "So that's it? You're just kicking me out?" "We're setting boundaries," Dad said. I laughed bitterly. "That's rich, considering all I've done for this family." "Like what?" Stephanie sneered. "Like helping Mom through her panic attacks. Like loaning Michael money when he wrecked his car. Like listening to you cry when Jason dumped you for the 3rd time." The room went still. "We didn't ask for your help," Michael muttered. "No, you just took it. And now I'm disposable?" "You're not a child anymore," Dad said. "It's time you acted like it." I felt like I was falling, but my feet were glued to the floor. My family, my own blood, had held a secret meeting and decided I was the problem. The burden. The one they could cut loose. "Fine," I said, voice low. "I'll go." "What?" Mom asked, startled. "You want me out?" "I'm out." Stephanie actually looked up then, surprise flickering in her eyes. Michael's smirk faded. Even Dad hesitated. But I wasn't bluffing. Something inside me had cracked wide open, and for the first time I saw them clearly. They didn't see my effort, my resilience, the hours I'd spent building my dream from scraps. They only saw what they wanted to see. A failure, a disappointment, a scapegoat. "You'll regret this," I said, standing taller. Dad rolled his eyes. "Don't be dramatic." "No," I replied calmly. "You don't get to decide that anymore." I turned and walked toward my room, packed a single suitcase, grabbed my laptop, my journal, and the small stack of business cards I had printed just last month. I could hear whispers behind me, but I didn't stop. As I stepped out the front door, the sun hit my face like a spotlight. The air was cool, sharp, with freedom. I looked back once, not at them, but at the house, at the life they had tried to trap me in. They thought they were cutting me off. But really, I was finally free. And they had no idea what I was about to become. The first night I left home, I slept in the back seat of my car. It was cold, cramped, and smelled like old fries from a drive-thru I didn't remember going to. My single suitcase sat beside me like a silent witness to my downfall. I stared up at the ceiling, unsure whether I was more angry or terrified. I had nowhere to go. No plan. Just pride and the burning memory of my father's words. "You're a burden." I wasn't about to go crawling back. The next morning, I called Rachel, my best friend since sophomore year of college, and one of the few people who had always believed in me. "Don't say a word," she said after hearing my voice. "Just come over." And just like that, I had a couch. It wasn't glamorous. Her apartment was barely big enough for one person, let alone two. But it had heat, Wi-Fi, and enough silence for me to breathe. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't have to defend myself just for existing. Still, reality hit fast and hard. The money in my account barely covered gas and groceries. My part-time freelance gigs dried up within a week. Clients ghosted, invoices went unpaid, and the business I'd been quietly nurturing, the tiny online store that had kept me afloat, wasn't making nearly enough to keep me above water. But I refused to panic. Panic was for people with the luxury of backup plans. Instead, I worked. I spent 12 hours a day glued to my laptop, researching, learning, experimenting. I watched YouTube videos on e-commerce algorithms, downloaded free guides on copywriting, and devoured every article I could find about digital marketing. I updated my website, redesigned my packaging, rewrote my product descriptions, and launched a small Instagram campaign I could barely afford. Most of it failed. Some of it didn't. I started getting small wins, $20 orders here, $30 there. A few repeat customers. A stranger emailed me asking if I offered wholesale. I almost cried. Meanwhile, I took every side gig I could find. I walked dogs, edited resumes, even transcribed audio files for pennies per hour. I'd lie awake some nights staring at Rachel's popcorn ceiling, wondering if my parents were right. Was I chasing a fantasy? Was I really just nothing? But every time that voice crept in, I shoved it back with a single sentence. They don't get to be right. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after I moved in with Rachel, I got an order for $500. It was from a small boutique in Oregon. They wanted to stock my candles for the holidays. I stared at the email for a full 5 minutes before screaming so loud I scared Rachel's cat off the windowsill. That order changed everything. It gave me credibility, momentum, hope. Within 2 months, I had 4 wholesale clients, steady website traffic, and a growing waitlist. My little store, the one they had called a waste of time, was finally becoming something real. I used the money to pay off a few lingering debts and finally treated Rachel to a real dinner. No coupons, no microwaved pasta. "You're doing it," she said that night, grinning over a shared slice of cheesecake. I smiled, but part of me still didn't believe it. Until the day I checked my business account and saw a 5-figure balance. 5 digits. My name. I just stared at it. Me, the girl they said would never make it. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something bigger than they ever imagined. With the money, I moved into my own apartment. A modest 1-bedroom with exposed brick and squeaky floors, but it was mine. I bought a desk, upgraded my laptop, and finally replaced the suitcase I'd been living out of for months. I started walking differently, talking differently. I felt it, confidence settling into my bones, but there was still that voice, that echo. "You never brought anything good to this family." It didn't haunt me the way it used to. But it lingered, like a scar I could feel even after it healed. Sometimes I'd catch myself imagining what I'd say to them if I ever got the chance, how I'd show them my success, how I'd make them regret every cruel word. But I didn't chase that fantasy. I had no intention of going back. They had cut me off, and I had moved on, or so I thought. 2 years passed. My company had a name, a logo, a following. I had clients overseas. I was invited to speak at a small business summit in New York. My photo appeared in a local entrepreneur feature. I was, by every definition, thriving. And then one evening as I sipped tea in my office and watched the city lights blink to life, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Alyssa, we need to talk." Dad, I froze. It was the first time I had heard from him since the day I walked out. I didn't respond. A week later, another message. "Mom, it's important. Please call us." Still, I said nothing. Then came the voicemails, one after another, each more desperate than the last. "The house is in danger. Your father lost his job. We don't know what to do." I listened to them all, every single word. And for the first time in years, I felt nothing. No guilt, no shame, no obligation, just clarity. They hadn't called to apologize. They hadn't reached out because they missed me. They needed something. They were sinking. And I was the only one left who could save them. I set my phone down, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. Let them sweat, because when I called back, it would be on my terms. I let them wait. The calls kept coming, first once a day, then 3, sometimes 5. My voicemail inbox filled with voices I hadn't heard in 2 years. Voices that once told me I wasn't enough, now shaking with desperation. I didn't delete them. I listened. I listened to my mother's breathless pleas. I listened to my father's voice, quieter than I remembered, stumbling over pride and panic. I listened to Stephanie's attempt to sound calm, professional even, like we were business acquaintances and not sisters who hadn't spoken since she told me I was a parasite. Each message was a piece of poetry. Not because they were sincere, but because they finally understood what it felt like to need someone who had no obligation to answer. I waited exactly 2 weeks. Then, on a Wednesday morning, with the sun rising outside my floor-to-ceiling office windows, I picked up the phone and called back. Mom answered on the second ring. "Alyssa?" She whispered, like she wasn't sure it was really me. "It's me." Oh my God. I could hear the breath leave her chest. "Thank you for calling. We didn't know if—" "I didn't call to catch up," I interrupted. I heard the voicemails. Silence. "Then, your father, he lost his job months ago. We thought things would get better, but then Stephanie got laid off and Michael—" I cut her off again. "What do you want?" She hesitated. We need help. Financial help. The mortgage." I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the skyline. "Is Dad there?" "Yes." "Put him on." There was a shuffle, a pause. Then, the voice I hadn't heard in 2 years. "Alyssa," he said, almost cautiously. "Dad." Another pause. "We need your help." There it was. The man who once kicked me out without blinking, now asking for my help like it was the simplest thing in the world. I let the silence stretch. "You told me I was a burden," I said flatly. "I was wrong," he replied, the words strained like they burned coming out. "You didn't just kick me out, Dad. You erased me." He said nothing. "I had nothing," I continued. "No job, no apartment, no support. And I built something from the ground up. You didn't believe in me, but I believed in myself. And now you want the benefits of a success you refuse to acknowledge." He sighed. "We're not proud of what happened." "That's convenient." Silence again. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But I don't do charity." "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means if you want my help, we're doing this my way. I'll contact you with a time and a place. Show up. All of you. Or don't bother reaching out again." Before he could respond, I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I felt control settle into my bones. 3 days later, I reserved a private room in one of the most exclusive restaurants downtown. A place that required a wait list and a dress code. I wore a black fitted blazer, gold hoops, and confidence like war paint. They arrived late. When I walked in, I saw it in their faces. Discomfort, hesitation, uncertainty. Stephanie was overdressed, trying to keep up appearances. Michael looked like he hadn't slept. Mom's eyes were red, and Dad looked small. Not physically, but in presence, like someone who had been hollowed out by time and regret. I sat down and placed my phone on the table. No hugs, no greetings, just business. "Let's get one thing straight," I said calmly. "You're not here to beg, you're here to listen." Stephanie opened her mouth. "Don't," I said. "You've had your say, it's my turn now." They fell silent. "You want my help," I continued. "Fine, but I want something in return." My father's jaw clenched. "Alyssa, we're not here to make deals." I raised a hand. "Then you can leave." He stopped talking. "I'm offering to buy the house, full market value. No tricks. In return, you stay as tenants and pay rent. If you miss a payment, you leave. Simple." Mom gasped softly. "You want to own our home?" "No," I said. "I want collateral. I'm not giving you money out of love. I'm making an investment. You turned your back on me. This is business." Michael looked down at the table. Stephanie just stared at me, expression unreadable. Dad's hands balled into fists. "That house has been in our family for—" "And you were ready to lose it until you needed me," I replied sharply. "You don't get to use history as leverage now." Mom's voice cracked. "Please, can't we figure something else out?" "This is the only offer," I said, standing. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, I walk away." Dad looked like he might explode. Stephanie scoffed under her breath. Mom looked like she might cry. But no one said no, so I walked out. That night, I slept like a rock. No anxiety, no guilt, just clarity. This was my power. This was the reversal of everything they had taken from me. They made me feel small for so long. But now they were the ones sitting on the other side of the table, praying for my grace. The next morning, nothing. Afternoon, nothing. Evening, still silence. I almost laughed. Dad's pride was a beast. I knew he was choking on it, and I didn't care. They wanted me to be their savior, but only on their terms. Too late for that. On the second day, my phone buzzed. Stephanie, Dad signed. It's done. I stared at the message, unmoving. No confetti, no fireworks, just a cold, clean confirmation. I had won. And yet, why didn't it feel like victory? I walked to the window, watching people move along the street below, unaware of the quiet revolution I'd just completed. For 2 years, I had dreamed of this moment, of the apology, the admission, the proof that I was never the failure they said I was. And now I had it all. But instead of satisfaction, all I felt was empty. They were finally in the palm of my hand, and suddenly it didn't feel like power. It felt like the ending of a story I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. We met again, this time in a lawyer's office. Neutral territory, clean lines, cold lighting, a mahogany conference table between us like a battlefield. My lawyer, Simone, sat to my right, crisp and unreadable in a navy suit. Across from us sat my family. Mom twisting a tissue in her lap, Stephanie pretending not to be nervous, Michael looking like he wanted to vanish, and Dad looked like someone who had just been forced to swallow his own pride and was still choking on the aftertaste. The house deed sat between us. All they had to do was sign. No small talk, no apologies, no, how have you been? Just signatures and tensions so thick it could have cracked the windows. Simone flipped the papers toward them and said, "These outline the transfer of ownership and terms of the rental agreement. It's a standard lease, month to month. Any missed payments will result in eviction proceedings. You'll be required to carry renter's insurance and maintain the property." Mom nodded without looking up. Stephanie chewed her lip. Michael stared at his hands. Dad didn't move. I watched him. He was wearing the same jacket I remembered from 2 years ago, except now it looked oversized, like his anger had burned away all the weight he used to carry. "Do you have questions?" I asked, voice calm, deliberate. His jaw twitched. "Do you feel powerful now?" I didn't blink. "I feel in control." "That's not the same." "No," I said, leaning forward. "It's better." He finally picked up the pen. For a moment I thought he might throw it across the room, but instead he signed, hard, fast, like he was ripping off a bandage. The others followed. One by one they made it official. The house, their last shred of legacy, was mine. It should have felt like revenge, but it didn't. It felt like paperwork. As they filed out of the office, Mom lingered. Her eyes searched mine, soft and uncertain. "You didn't have to do this," she said. I tilted my head. "You're right, I didn't." Then I turned away. A week passed. The silence returned. But it was different now. This time, it wasn't about rejection, it was about reflection. I had everything they once told me I couldn't have. My own home, my own business, my own power. And yet the victory felt hollow, until I got the text. "Michael, Dad isn't doing well. You should come by." I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. The part of me that remembered every insult, every dismissal, every cold shoulder screamed, "Ignore it." But another part, the part that had once just wanted to be enough, hesitated. What did it mean to win if it didn't change anything? That evening, I drove back to the house I now owned. My tenants didn't know I was coming, and honestly, I didn't care. The yard was uncut, the paint chipping. A cracked window in the garage I hadn't noticed before. Had it always looked like this? Or had I just refused to see it? Mom opened the door, startled. "Alyssa?" I nodded and walked past her. The living room hadn't changed. Same worn couch, same crooked family photos, same stale smell of old carpet and fading memory. I made my way down the hall and stood in the doorway of my father's room. He was sitting in a recliner, staring out the window. Wrapped in a blanket he used to scold me for leaving on the floor. His hands trembled slightly. He looked older, smaller, human. He didn't turn around when I walked in. "So," he said, "you came." I said nothing. "You're probably here to gloat." "No," I said, "I already did that." He chuckled, dry and bitter. "Of course you did." I looked at him for a long moment. The man who once towered over me, who barked orders, who judged everything I wore, said, dreamed of, was now just fading. "You're sick," I said flatly. He nodded. "How long?" "Almost a year." "And you didn't tell me because you would have used it against me." I tilted my head. "And you would have deserved it." He winced, but he didn't argue. We sat in silence. I signed over the house, I said finally. His head turned. What? To Mom. Full title. No rent. No strings. He stared at me like I had just spoken another language. Why? He asked. Because I don't need it. He shook his head. You're better at this than I thought. I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. He looked away. Then why are you here? I didn't have an answer. Not one I was ready to say out loud. I stepped toward the door, paused, turned back. You always said real strength was about control, I said. But you were wrong. Real strength is letting go. He didn't respond, and I didn't wait for him to. I drove home with the windows down, letting the wind whip through my hair, trying to shake the heaviness clinging to my chest. I had just walked away from the man who defined my entire childhood. I had bought my freedom. I had outgrown them. I had ended the war they started. So why didn't it feel like peace? Because the truth I didn't want to admit was this. Revenge didn't heal me. Power didn't complete me. But walking away for real this time, maybe that was the beginning of something new, of something mine, of something free. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The city was still quiet, the kind of silence that feels rare in a place that never sleeps. I stood by the window in my apartment, my place, holding a mug of coffee I hadn't tasted yet. Below, people were starting their days. Runners, dog walkers, delivery trucks, and me, I had no idea what I was supposed to feel. I had done the impossible. I had walked into my old life, claimed every ounce of power I had been denied, and walked back out on my terms. But instead of triumph, there was stillness. Not peace. Not joy. Just a strange, heavy quiet. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Another message from Michael. He's getting worse. You should come. I hadn't responded to the first one, or the second. But this one sat with me differently. I didn't owe them anything. That thought had carried me through years of struggle, through every rejection, every sleepless night, every voicemail I didn't return. But still, I found myself grabbing my keys. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about me. About finally ending a chapter that had been left open for far too long. The house looked even smaller than it had a week ago. I parked across the street and sat in my car for a long moment, watching the place I used to call home. The lawn was still uncut. The porch light still flickered. The mailbox leaned slightly, like no one had bothered to fix it. It wasn't my responsibility anymore, and yet, here I was. I rang the doorbell once. Mom opened it faster than I expected. Alyssa, she said, almost breathless. Thank you for coming. I didn't answer, just stepped inside. She moved to hug me, but I stepped past her, straight to the hallway. I knew exactly where to go. Dad's room was dim. The blinds were closed. A fan hummed softly in the corner. He was lying in bed this time, not sitting. His breathing was uneven, his chest rising and falling in slow, jagged rhythm. Tubes, monitors, a small oxygen machine at his bedside. He looked breakable. His eyes opened slowly when I walked in. You came, he said, voice hoarse. I nodded. Michael said it was bad. He tried to chuckle, but it came out as a cough. That boy's too honest. Silence hung between us, heavy, uncomfortable, honest. I signed the house back to Mom, I said, arms crossed. I know, she told me. He looked at me then. Really looked. Not as the girl he had kicked out. Not as the daughter who'd never been enough. But as someone he couldn't quite recognize anymore. You didn't have to, he said. I know. Then why? I took a slow breath. Because I'm not you. He closed his eyes at that. Like the words hit harder than he expected. I moved closer, standing at the foot of the bed. You taught me a lot, Dad. Not by example, but by contrast. You taught me what not to be, how not to treat people, how not to measure worth. He didn't respond. And for a long time I thought proving you wrong would fix everything. That success would erase the pain. But it didn't. He opened his eyes again. So why are you here then? He asked. I considered that for a long moment. Because I wanted to see for myself that you're just a man, I said quietly. Not some myth, not some monster, just human. His lips pressed together, and now I see it. He nodded slowly, the smallest movement. I'm sorry, he said. For everything. For what I said, for how I treated you. I let the words sit there. They didn't heal me. They didn't make me cry. But they mattered. Even if it was too late to change the past, it wasn't too late to stop carrying it. I forgive you, I said. And I meant it. Not for him. For me. I left the room without saying goodbye. Some things didn't need ceremony. In the hallway, I found Stephanie sitting on the stairs. She stood when she saw me. "So, that was nice of you," she said awkwardly. I raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to pretend to care now." "I'm not pretending," she said. "I just didn't expect you to come back." "I didn't come back," I said. "I came through." She nodded, almost respectful. "You really made it, huh?" "I did." She glanced toward the living room, then back at me. "Do you ever think about fixing things?" "Fixing?" I asked. "Or pretending it never happened?" Stephanie didn't answer. "I don't want a fake family," I said. "If you ever want to talk for real, you know where to find me." Then I walked out the door. Back in my apartment, I sat on the couch, phone silent in my lap. No more messages, no more begging, just quiet. For the first time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I didn't need to win anymore, because I had something better than victory. I had freedom, I had clarity, I had myself. Everything I had ever been denied, I had built it, brick by brick, scar by scar. And nothing, not even my family's approval, could validate it more than that. I wasn't their disappointment, I wasn't their failure, I was my own redemption, and this time, I wasn't looking back. 2 days after I visited my father, I received a voicemail from Michael. Just one line: "He's gone." I stood in the middle of my apartment, holding the phone against my chest. The room felt quiet in a way I hadn't experienced before. Not the silence of absence, but the silence that comes after something final. He was gone. No more words. No more apologies. No more chances to rewrite what had been written years ago. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel something, but because I had cried for him long before he ever deserved it. My grief wasn't for the man who died. It was for the daughter who never got to be loved fully. The girl who had once begged for approval and was handed rejection instead. That girl? She had been gone for a long time too. I sat on the edge of my bed and took a deep breath. Then I got dressed, picked up my keys, and drove. This time not to their house, not to confront anyone, not to finish some emotional battle, but to say goodbye. To myself. The funeral was small, private. Not because the family wanted it that way, but because the guest list had shrunk over the years as my father's pride burned bridges he never rebuilt. I stood at the back of the service in a black dress I bought the night before, simple and strong. The kind of dress you wear not to mourn, but to mark an ending. Stephanie was there, sitting with Michael and my mom. I didn't join them. I wasn't there for unity. I was there for closure. The priest spoke kindly, mentioned strength, hard work, dedication, the traits people admire on the surface. But those weren't the things I remembered. What I remembered were the cutting words, the cold stares. The day I stood in our living room and heard him say I was nothing. Still, I didn't stand there with hate in my heart, because hate is just another chain, and I was done wearing chains. After the service, Mom approached me in the parking lot. Her eyes were puffy, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "He asked about you," she said quietly. "In the end, almost every day." I nodded. "I think he regretted a lot." "I know," I replied. She looked up. "Did you?" "No," I said. "I regretted waiting so long to let go." A silence stretched between us. She looked like she wanted to hug me, but wasn't sure if she had the right. So I took the step. I hugged her. Not because I forgave everything, but because I forgave enough. When we pulled apart, she smiled through tears. "You're so strong." I shook my head gently. "No, Mom, I'm finally just free." That night, I sat on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the lights of the city sparkle like stars that refused to be ignored. I thought about everything that had happened. How I went from being the family's disappointment to the only one standing. How I had spent years trying to prove my worth, only to discover I'd never needed their validation in the first place. How revenge had once felt like power, but peace turned out to be the real flex. Because I wasn't fighting anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was whole. Complete. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally happy. The next morning, I opened my laptop and looked at the homepage of my business. A new message had come in. From a young woman who had seen my interview online. She wrote, "I started my own business last year. My family doesn't support me, but seeing your story gave me hope. Thank you." I stared at the message, heart full. This was the legacy I wanted. Not a house, not revenge, not even a last word, but impact, inspiration, something real. I replied, "Keep going. They'll doubt you until they need you, But by then you won't need them, you'll have yourself. And that's enough. Months passed. The seasons changed. I stopped checking for calls from home. I stopped wondering what they thought of me. I stopped needing them to say I was enough, because I had already decided I was. Rachel came over one night with champagne. "What are we celebrating?" I asked. She grinned. "Your company just hit 1 million in sales." I blinked. 1 million. I laughed, louder than I had in years. We toasted on my balcony. Music playing, city glowing. And me? I didn't think about the house. I didn't think about the funeral. I didn't think about the girl I used to be. Because that chapter was over. And the new one? It was entirely mine. If you had asked me years ago what victory looked like, I would have said something petty, making them beg, watching them crawl, proving them wrong. But now, standing in the life I built with my own hands, I know better. Victory isn't proving people wrong. Victory is outgrowing the need to. Victory is loving yourself enough to let go of who hurt you. Victory is sitting alone in your own home, in your own peace, and realizing you're finally, truly free. And me? I won. Not because I beat them, but because I became someone they could never break again.